Hello again. Welcome to the first session of the Morphology section of our series on Old Albanian. In this video, I will introduce you to the main features of the verbal system in Albanian. Our roadmap will prepare you for the upcoming subjects. Here's our roadmap. We will start by having a look at generalities. Then we will look at the present stems, followed by the imperative stems. Next up are the aorist stems and the optative stems, followed by the participles, and finally some words on the stem suppletion. First, we will discuss some generalities. The stem of an Albanian verb can show different forms throughout its inflection. The variation can be slight, moderate, or it can take the shape of stem suppletion. Following the recent discussion of the verbal morphology by Matzinger and Schumacher, we distinguished the verbal base from the 5 different possible stem forms, which together serve to build the complete verbal paradigm. And so these stem forms are the present stem, then the second singular imperative stem, followed by the aorist stem. The fourth one is the optative stem, and finally the participle stem. There can be, and there often is, formal identity between at least 2 or 3 of these stem forms. We now turn to verbal inflection. This can basically be indicated by 3 different procedures. First, the addition of inflectional endings, including 0. Second, possible vowel changes in the base. These include vowel raising, such as from E to E, vowel raising, the monophthongization of diphthongs, and conversely diphthongization, such as from O to UO. And in the third place, inflection may be indicated by consonant changes of the final consonant of the base, especially palatalization, such as from K to K and of G to J, as well as assimilation of T to S. The next slide shows you the present stems. This is the first category we will discuss. The first type of present stems concerns monosyllabic stems, which coincide with the verbal base. Examples given here are the word di, to know, and dieg, to burn. Next, we find a large number of n-stem verbs, in which the base is enlarged with the suffix un after consonants, such as in eten, to walk, or just n after vowels, as in kuiton, to think, and mban, to hold. Most of the productively formed verbs belong to this stem type. The third group is that of t-stem presents, where the suffix can take the forms t, at, et, it, or as. The example here, perket, to touch, and vred, to kill. Finally, there is a small number of irregular stems, of which the present inflection is deviant, especially in the case of usht, to be, and thought, to say. We turn to the Proto-Indo-European sources. For most Albanian present stems, their inflectional endings ultimately go back to the Proto-Indo-European thematic presence, of course with all the phonetic and analogical changes that took place in the intervening millennia. For the verbal n stems and t stems, we assume that they represent the addition of the suffix ye, yo, to the suffixes n, respectively t, so here and here. And this addition of ye, yo explains the palatalizations and assimilations of n and t that occur in the inflection, as we have seen on the preceding slide. The 2 athematic verbs, usht and thought, continue the Proto-Indo-European athematic present endings. Here is the first table with the inflection of the present. this table displays the main present endings of the first two present classes, the monosyllabic type in di and hiek, and the end stems in kuiton and etzen. We give the full paradigm of the indicative plus the second and third person singular of the subjunctive, which are the only subjunctive forms to present different endings, namely sh for the second singular and for the third singular. Sh and Without going into all the details, we may point to the first plural ending me, which recalls the m endings of the first plural verb forms of many other Indo-European languages, and the third plural ending ne or une, which has no rhoticism in Tosc and therefore goes back to an n cluster, reminiscent of the well-known Indo-European third plural endings containing nt. For details on this origin of the ending and of the n, consult our video on the Geg-Tosc split in the introductory section. Note also that the vowel change in the stem of the verb hiek, to pull, right here in the second plural form, is typical of this category. Here are the third and fourth class of presents. The T stem presents, here the verb perket, to touch, with its typical suffix variants as, it, and it. And next, the table shows the athematic presents of to be and to say, which have very different endings, especially in the singular, with a final m in the first singular, no visible ending in the second singular, and an ending t in the third singular, as over here. Note that the form he or she is has three variants. The form asht, this one here, which continues Proto-Indo-European esti more or less directly. Then the nasal form a, which probably continues an adverb meaning in or present. And finally the form anched, which combines both preceding ones and hence must have meant is present. The next slide goes on to the imperative stems, which for many verbs coincide with the verbal base, as in the case of Old Gag ban, do, mba, hold, and kuitou, remember. These forms over here. Some verbs take an ending y, as the form mos druoi fiernot, or as in rieve. The first plural and second plural imperative forms are identical to the corresponding indicative forms. Compare Budi's form baim, let us build, over here, and Buzuku's mos vidni, don't you steal, with the prohibitive particle mos. Now we move on to the aorist stems. Aorist stems come in three basic flavors. The first are the V aorists, which feature a suffix V after the stem final vowel in part of their paradigm, though other forms of these stems have lengthening of the stem final vowel and no V. So lav next to la, and kthev next to stem kthe. But instead of lengthening at the synchronic level, we often find diphthongization, as with kuituo and kthue in the examples given here. Number two, the T aorist shows a T suffix throughout, sometimes preceded by a J. Fiet, the aorist of sleep, bite, the aorist of to hold, and thimpt, the aorist of themp, hurt. The third category, the suffixless aorist, sometimes shows changes in the vowel and or the final consonant of the base. For instance, the verb dieg, to burn, becomes dodge in the aorist, right here, whereas v, to place, has the aorist stem vun. Here is the slide on the aorist inflection. The main things to note of the aorist inflection are the endings a in the first singular, e in the second singular, and in the third person singular we find either the ending e in the first two classes or 0 in the last two examples. In the plural of the aorist, the endings are shorter than in the present, but still the first plural m and the third plural n remind us of the similar endings in the present, m and n. In the third singular middle, so the final row of this table, or the non-active form, it is the particle u that adds the non-active semantics. This one over here. Now we come to the optative stems. Synchronically, the optative stem is often identical to that of the aorist and or that of the participle. Corresponding, first of all, with the V aorist, we find the first type of optative as an F optative, as in kuitovš, may you think. Secondly, the T optative corresponds with the T aorist, as in îmbăitești, may you hold in this example. The suffix optative is either identical to the aorist stem, as with lascia, may I let, to the stem let, or it is identical to the present singular stem. The latter happens if the suffixless aorist has O vocalism, which apparently is not tolerated in the optative. Hence, we find third singular hjekte, may he pull, to the verb heć, whereas the aorist has hoć with O vocalism. The inflection of the optative is given on the next slide. It is characterized by the sibilant sh in all forms except for the third singular, which has an as yet unexplained ending t. The plural forms all show the element she. The etymological explanation of these endings is still disputed. We now come to the participles. For the formation of the participle, Albanian usually uses the base that we also find in the aorist stem. There is one exception though. If the aorist has O vocalism in the stem, the participle does not use this stem, but rather it uses the present base, as we saw similarly for the optative. There are several different suffixes that form participles. First is the suffix n, as in Old Geg pine, drunk, which roticizes in tosk and becomes spire in the modern standard. In a few verbs such as tosk therne, said, the suffix n does not have roticism, and so it must go back to a geminate n in Proto-Albanian. In extended form, this suffix is found as une in Geg and ure in tosk, as in ardune, come, versus ardure in tosk, and this suffix has become the most productive one in recent stages of the language. Next, the suffix m is found after all kinds of vowel final present stems, and it causes lengthening or diphthongization of the stem final vowel, as in kuituum, thought, dbume, chased, and unvram, killed. Finally, a suffix t is also found at least in a few Old Geg forms, but not in tosk. Here Old Geg pite, drunk. One more slide on the participles. Indeed, the same participle can sometimes be found with different suffixes in Old Albanian. The best examples are the words drunk and seen. Compare, for instance, on this slide, the Old Geg forms pane, pate, and pam, as well as Old Tosk par, which all mean the same word, seen, and the Old Tosk form par goes back to pane. This situation of having different suffixes for the same meaning suggests that each participle still had its own meaning and morphological status in Proto-Albanian, their simplification being an ongoing process in Old Albanian times. Finally, we provide a small selection of frequent verbs which show stem suppletion, mostly between the present on the one hand and the aorist and participle on the other hand. So, present versus aorist and participle. This is the case for the verbs to see, to give, to be, to have, to eat, and to fall, all in this table. Or we find that the aorist is the odd one out, as is the case here of the verb to take with the aorist zun versus the stem zan in the other two forms. This concludes our treatment of the Old Albanian verbal stem formation. Faleminderit për vëmendjen tuaj. I thank you very much for your attention. Take care and see you in the next video.